Is that,
Why did it make us go back to the same breakout room?
yeah, we definitely have a lot of the same folks. I'm not sure if it's everybody.
Can you all
They told-
jump into a different one?
They made us go back to they like made us do it.
I mean, we're happy to have you guys again because
Yeah.
So do we choose a different one, right?
Yeah,
you
we're
can
gonna do
just
the same
leave.
thing. So unless you
Okay,
want to do it
thank you.
again.
Okay,
Hey,
I
thank
just
you.
said
Misty.
no. It invited me and I just said no.
okay.
And I
Hey,
ended up in
Misty,
here.
how are you?
Hello.
Nice to see
Good.
you.
I know. It's funny to go to an event in person and be online instead. I'm gonna say no. And my PJs on the bottom.
Um,
I'm sure people are doing the same thing, so we'll give everybody a minute to Zoom jump.
Let me make sure that I'm not supposed to record a different session if this is the same one again. Like, I think I am not, but I just
Cool, cool. We're here for all of it.
It's good to see that Craft got a logo.
Craft does have a logo. One of your lessons is on the Craft. What? Oh, we used one of your lessons actually with co-design. Oh yeah, Chris, this is Misty who did the lesson that we just used with the co-design fellows.
so much for putting all that work. It's made our lives a lot easier.
Misty works at East Palo Alto Academy.
Oh,
Sorry,
nice.
I just put you on blast in front of all these other folks.
No, it's okay.
Y'all are right across the street from East Side Prep, right?
We are actually, yes.
We're
I've
doing-
never actually been there. In 5 years of teaching there, I've never crossed the street.
All right. So I think we'll get started. I think maybe we'll have a couple of friends join us a little bit later as they navigate Zoom land. But welcome to session 2. I'm Christine Bywater. Chris and I both work at the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. I am a staff member and I work at CSET, which stands for the Center to Support Excellence in Teaching. I do professional development and coaching in all areas of technology, and I come to the space as a former high school social studies teacher. So welcome.
And hi, everybody. I'm Chris Ma. I'm a PhD student in the Graduate School of Education at Stanford. I study learning sciences, teacher education, and writing, and I'm a former high school English teacher from Minnesota. All right, here's our session for the day. We're going to do a quick warm-up activity, talk a little bit about the session and why we're doing this work. We'll spend the bulk of the time doing an activity around ethics and responsible use of AI. And then we'll wrap up with some takeaways and send you off with some resources for continuing learning. And Marco, I don't think there's a sign-in sheet. Okay, we're going to start off with a little warm-up poll. And let me get the link for you because we just updated. If you've got your phone on you, go ahead and click that. Go ahead and click that, or go ahead and scan that QR code, and the link is coming to you in the chat. All right, so please take 90 seconds, 2 minutes to fill out this short poll. There are many, many valid, important concerns about AI, and we want to hear which ones sort of rise to the top for you. So take 90 seconds, fill out that poll, and then we'll show you the results of the group. finish up your last row or two. And then Christine, whenever the chart has populated, we'll show you some data. Okay, interesting. So this is totally different from the first session that we did. It looks like the one that rises to the top. So across the x-axis is the different concerns, and if we'll just focus in on the blue bars. Looks like AI will worsen inequity is the biggest. Okay, so keep a snapshot of this screen in mind. Today we're actually going to dig into AI ethics and responsible use, which kind of cuts across a couple of these categories. So keep this in mind. If you want to comment on any of the data here in the chat, go ahead and do that. But we'll come back to this poll at the end.
Okay, so for our time together today, our guiding question is we're going to think about how can we work with students to develop norms and classroom guidelines to shape the ethical and responsible use of AI in classrooms. We know that the technology is rapidly evolving. So one of the things Chris and myself and our team have been working with teachers on is this idea that it needs to be co-constructed. The technology is going to constantly be changing and evolving. So how do we do that with students? Giving students agency in this conversation also empowers them as well as us to know that we're all in here to learn together. So our goal for this session is for you to leave with one concrete approach for doing this or an idea that you want to take up back in your classroom. So we're going to do something called a chatterfall, which if you've been in Zoom, you've done this before, but for those that this is new, we want you to think about one of these two questions. We're going to ask that you type it into the chat, but not yet hit enter. We're going to give everyone some typing time, and then we're going to all hit enter at the same time. So I want you to think about what is one of your current classroom norms or policies around AI? If you don't yet have that, what's an aspirational norm or policy you want to implement? So we're going to give you just a minute. Go ahead and type it, but please hold off on holding enter until I let you know. Okay, go ahead and click enter, and then we should see people's comments. Great, thank you for these. So I want you to hold these as we go into our next activity. As what we're thinking about, I see like some about using or creating AI with other, how do they inform this literacy? How do we use it as a tool for our learning so they can learn from it?
All right, so we're going to dive into an activity here to just kind of consider how students might use AI tools in ways that are more or less responsible, more or less supportive of their learning. So most of you have probably heard of ChatGPT by now, but this is a new tool to me. It's called Chat PDF, and it does exactly what it sounds like it does. Thanks, Christine. So basically what the tool does is it allows you to upload a PDF of some text, and then there's a chatbot on the side that answers questions about the text. So here in the screenshot, there's an example of The Lottery. It's a short story by Shirley Jackson, often taught in high schools. And then on the right side, there is a chatbot basically that can kind of scan and quote unquote read the story and then answer questions back. So obviously students can use this in a range of ways. Some are more like cheating, some are more like really supporting their learning. So we're going to consider some use cases and talk about how students might use it. So in a moment, we're going to put a link to a Jamboard. And on that Jamboard, you're going to see a couple different ways that a student might use Chat PDF. I'll put the link in just a second. And Christine, I think we're going to use version 2 for this one. So I'm going to just put the link in the chat.
I got you. There you go.
We use that one. In this activity, we'll take about 10 minutes in small group breakout rooms. So first, say hello to each other, introduce yourselves, where you work, what you teach. Then you're going to take a look at 4 scenarios of how that student might use Chat PDF. You're going to discuss with your partners where each scenario falls, from least responsible to most responsible. Now, you might debate what that actually means, responsible versus not. Our working definition is sort of like, is this supporting the student's learning, or is this undermining the student's learning? So use that as a starting point. And then finally, after you've kind of sorted them, you're going to discuss, based on this activity, what are some classroom norms you would want to communicate for your students around the use of responsible and ethical use of Chat PDF and tools like it. Okay. So when you click on that link that I posted, you'll be asked to make a copy of a Jamboard. And so you can just kind of talk through those examples with your group and then sort the examples. So we have Zoom rooms 3A through 3E. And I think we have 10 people here. So maybe just try and do groups of 2 to 3. Go ahead and choose a Zoom room between 3A, 3E, and try and sort yourselves into groups of 2 to 3. We'll come back in 10 minutes. We'll pop into your room to bring you back, but go ahead and head into a breakout room. Oh, give me 1 second. Don't click that link just yet.
I have it. Do you want, Chris?
You have it?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. So please click the link, Christine.
Thank you, Misty.
Okay, and then once you're ready, choose breakout room 3A through 3E, and we'll come back at 10:43.
Hey, Chris, sorry, did the breakout room start again, or?
You have to
Yes.
actually, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
About how long ago was that this time, or?
We just started them.
Got it. Okay, just want to make sure that I'm coming in at the right time. I'll
Yeah.
just join any one of them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks everybody for coming back, and thanks for those. Okay, so let's dive in. It looks like a number of you are on the original doc, moving stuff around. So let's start with just anywhere there was consensus. Please feel free to come off mute. We encourage you to come off mute, but if you want, you can also put your thoughts in the chat. Let's just start with the question of who you think had the most responsible use. So which student had most responsible use? What did your groups discuss? Steve, was that a hand?
Yeah, sorry. In our group, Angela and I, we kind of put people in an order, but then our discussion kind of led us to the point where it depends on what the next step is. All of these things could be more responsible than they sound like if they take a responsible step next. But like Ariana or Daryl, they could be, their intention with that could be, hey, AI, do my assignment for me so I can not think about it.
That's
It
a
just depends.
Yeah, that's a great point of like, it does depend on context. So, Steve, either you or Angela, it sounds like you were both talking about this. So can you give us an example, for instance, of, let's say Ariana asks, what's the main theme of this story? What's a way that she might use that in a way that is supportive of her learning?
That sounds like a great question for Angela. Personally, I use AI a lot just so that I can learn the pitfalls myself to share with students, and there's so many. I mean, but a lot of times I use it as a thought partner, and so she's just saying, "Hey, I want to see what Chat PDF says about this, and then I'm going to think about it, I'm going to digest it, interact a little bit, and then use that to inform my answer, not to be my answer."
Yeah,
Then I think that could be responsible use.
totally. And a lot of the ways that these models are trained, it's kind of, they're going to give you the most common answer in some cases. And maybe Ariana's going to take that output and critique it. Maybe she'll write a critique of what is generally thought to be the main theme. Others, so here, whoever was doing this one put Sumaya highlighting a paragraph. What's the significance of this paragraph as the most responsible? What did other groups discuss? Who did other groups consider the most responsible? And feel free to put it in the chat too.
Well, I don't mind speaking up about what we're talking about. I think we all just agreed that ethics is hard. And then we were kind of struggling a bit with the whole responsible versus least and most. Because it was more about, I started saying like it was more about the students being lazy versus like being more inquisitive and more detailed and specific in their inquiries. Which is a better way of saying it. But yes, because I think the blue post-it note, the student wasn't even asking the right question for the prompt, other than, I'm not even going to bother to read the, just summarize it for me and I'll make something up. But at least the person that was asking a very specific question about a specific paragraph seemed like they were going a little deeper.
So that's interesting. It sounds like you're thinking about like the amount of thinking that went into the prompting. Can you talk a little bit more about like, how do you see effort in the prompt versus effort in what Steve was talking about, what students did with the output?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I don't teach English, but I do teach some advisory, like study skills classes. And I don't think, especially like sophomores, have the skills to know about getting multiple perspectives and be able to like process those. So for me, I think a lot of them see ChatGPT as a way of just like doing their homework for them. Like, so again, my students would put in, you would say, write something about the themes. They would put in, what is the theme? Because they're so fucking late and direct. So it's a literacy to be able to say, oh, I'm going to ask for different opinions and compare and form my own opinion. And that is, I guess, that's to me is a responsible student because they keep going, right? They don't just at the first level of inquiry.
Got it. So would it, and this is a question, oh, it looks like Steve had a response.
I'm sorry, that just really triggered some thinking for me. And I think this is a way of approaching as teachers the use of AI, but it's like what critical thinking skills are demonstrated by crafting the prompt in the first place. You know, like maybe if you were to do this assignment and you were allowing the use of chat PDF, just having students share the prompts that they use to get the answers too, that really is another way to get at their thinking and evaluate that. And I don't know. Thanks for you're generating ideas for me. I appreciate that.
I'm going to put a question in the chat here, and I'd love to hear some additional voices too. So a follow-up question here is, how would your opinion be different if these students got the same information from different sources? So think like Google, SparkNotes, even just articles or class discussions. I'll give you a couple moments to think. And then please, we definitely encourage others to come off of mute or put in the chat. All right. Anyone have any thoughts on this question? Okay. Yep. Definitely the big question around like, how do you know how students got that information? I think that brings up a really big question around citation. Carol said, I always feel that chat is a summary of all these resources. Yeah, so AI can kind of almost like, and partly how it's trained, it pulls together information from many of these resources. That's right, including incorrect information. Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left. So let's move on to this next question briefly. Actually, Christine, go back to that. Thank you. We'll just briefly, let's think about, think based on this activity. We kind of started by thinking about some of our own classroom norms. Now that we've had a chance to think a little bit more deeply about what responsible and ethical use looks like, I want you to focus on that middle question. What classroom norms would you want to communicate with your students about the responsible and ethical use of AI tools? Feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute. I'm going to continue to use my teacher wait time. Cite your sources. Share the prompts you use. Absolutely. So transparency and documentation. Just like researching the web, students still need to validate that the responses are reasonable. Absolutely, just evaluating the information they're consuming. Okay, we're going to move on to our closing here, but before we do, we wanted to just share some student data with you. So there's a lot going on in these charts. This is a 2023 study conducted with folks from Stanford and Challenge Success. The big takeaway here is a couple things. If you look at the black bars, those are representing what students say is not responsible use of AI. So if you look at the different use cases across the top, almost all students agree that AI should not be used to do the writing or do the work for them. But if you think about the left-hand side of the chart here, students are much more mixed on whether they can or should use AI to generate ideas. So students realize there is some ways that AI can support their learning and some hard lines that should not be crossed. And then this next bar graph, I'll just fly through it. This is just showing a timestamp of pre ChatGPT versus post ChatGPT. The big takeaway here is that students' opinions really haven't changed, and they've even become more strict in terms of what they consider responsible use. So in 2019, 90% considered the use of AI chatbots as never allowable, and that number actually went up post AI and ChatGPT. What student population was polled? I can find out a little bit more. This is K-12. I think it was middle and high school, but I'll need to confirm that with you.
And do you want to share about the article, Chris?
Oh, right. There's a article coming out in the New York Times with the full report. But one of the things we couldn't show you today was some data that suggests reported cheating has actually not increased with ChatGPT in the last year.
So in conclusion, thank you for those of you who participated in the chat and the activity and the conversation. You all have sort of captured what we're going to share in your big takeaways as we think about ways to work with students to co-construct some norms and policies around ethical and responsible use of AI in our classroom. So we sort of think about these as mindsets and habits. Mindsets are the ways we think about it, the sort of the stances we take, and then the habits are the things that we do. So we really want to focus that these mindsets are asset-based so that you all as teachers, for example, have agency in shaping how students engage with AI. When Danielle and Steve were talking back and forth, one of the things that they were lifting is this concept that we need to make student thinking visible. To understand more about why and how the students are using these tools helps us teachers make decisions about their learning and about our own instruction. Believing that students are well-intentioned actors, right? There is space for them in these conversations as we co-construct. Also understanding that we know that AI can undermine and support learning. So what are the ways that we can make space for both in our classroom and talk about these things with students? And the other piece I think that got brought up is AI literacy is a matter of equity. We don't believe that it is okay to just say, well, you can't use these tools at all, and we're not going to have conversations. Both for us as adults and for the students that we serve, it is really important to start to have these conversations. How can this support our learning? How is it created? What's the bias? What's the misinformation that exists? And then some of those habits. If for students, how do we encourage students to be transparent about how they're using AI? Again, to what Steve and Danielle were sharing. For us as teachers, be transparent about our instructional goals. This came up in the chat with the activity you did. How can, even in that, sample activity, is there enough information so that a student understands what is responsible use of these tools in that activity? What do you want to know about how they used it versus maybe they're doing something that they think might be wrong? And please invite students into the dialogue around responsible AI use.
Yeah, and actually on that last point of inviting students in, one thing we do encourage you to do is we encourage you to do an activity sort of like the one we just did that's relevant to your discipline with your students. We've found that this could be a really great way to open up a dialogue with students about how they can and should be using AI in the classroom.
So in our last 5 minutes, we do want you to take, go ahead, Chris, sorry. A closing poll? Yeah. So we'll put it in the chat, but please also use the QR code. It'll be similar to the one you did for the opener, but we're interested to know if your mindsets have shifted at all. So take a moment to do that, and then we'll share some resources with you all. And to wrap up, we have posted some resources. We know this is the beginning of a conversation. You could probably spend a whole day talking about co-constructing norms around this with your students. So we called it an amuse-bouche in the last session. Hopefully the conversations and the activity has given you some direction in ways of thinking about this. I posted some resources in the chat that are also on this slide. Stanford Craft is a project Chris and I work for. It is a co-designed AI literacy resources. There will be more resources and sort of a revamp in January. But we encourage you, if you're a middle school or high school teacher, to explore those resources as ways to think and teach about AI with your students. We also included some articles around ChatGPT and cheating, and a really awesome AI resource educator document that you can explore. We thank you for your time. Looks like you have a couple more minutes before you head back into the main room. Chris and I will hang out and stick around if anyone has any questions or wants to have more conversations, but we appreciate you coming to our session and giving up some of your time on Saturday to explore this topic with us.
Absolutely, and we definitely hope that you'll reach out to follow. A couple people have asked about sign-in sheet. I have not gotten a sign-in sheet, Christine, have you?
No, we weren't given anything.